Hello, welcome back to my haunted library. Hope everyone's doing well. I'm doing great, I have to say. I've actually been very preoccupied putting together this rock and roll show that I produced that happened this past weekend. If you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, you may have seen some of my posts about that. Many posts about that because I was doing everything I could to promote that show, and it turned out to be a big success. And I'm very happy it went so well, and I'm relieved that it's over. Now I have a little more space to do some reading, which I'm doing, and also doing some other stuff. I'm gearing up to my annual library cleanup, probably next week. I'll do a video about that for my Patreon page because it's always an adventure. I always find new things that I've forgotten about because I actually did a lot of hauls this year. And I'm feeling good, you know, I just got my hair cut, I got my nails done, I'm wearing a new dress that I bought for my birthday, which is coming up at the end of August. So I'm doing a little dress rehearsal because this year I'm taking a few friends of mine, and we're all going out to dinner at a really nice restaurant in New Hope. So I thought, well, I'll wear this. And also because I'm talking about some books today and some films, TV shows rather, that kind of lends itself to this kind of glamour. So we'll start, well, first of all, I wanted to, before I start about the first topic, this is the way my videos have been. I used to do them like one video just wrapped around one book or one topic. And now since I'm only doing like once a week, I'll just talk and chat about whatever I read or watched or whatever's going on. I hope that's okay with everyone. I try to timestamp things, but it just seems to be the way it's working out. I just wanted to chat a little bit about the creative process. I know a lot of people who might watch this channel are very creative themselves. Any kind of creative project, whether it's your own project, which I do, or facilitating someone else's, it's always a struggle. So I wanted to mention that my friend, Dr. James Ippoliti, who I do the Bookworms podcast with, these just short, 15, 20 minute segments about writing, but also about creativity in general. And I know that he and I are very much on the same page with this. And we both have read and reread a few times an excellent book called I always get it twisted. It's The War of Art. It's a play on the art of war by Steven Pressfield. I was looking through my shelves thinking I could find it, but then I remembered I had it on ebook. But you can actually find a lot of it online because a lot of it's kind of like a short self-help book, but not in that tacky way. It's like aphorisms and concepts to meditate on that are really, really useful. And one thing that to me was such a great takeaway from that book was this concept of resistance. Some might call it blocks, but he uses the term resistance, and that is resistance to creativity. And it's very much a part of the creative process. And the more you become aware of it, the more you see it, and then the more you can kind of work through it or ignore it or whatever it is. So, and because I have done a lot of work on this, and I've been putting shows together for a really long time, whether it was Wizard of Oz in my backyard as a kid where I was directing the show. A lot of times it feels like the Charlie Brown Christmas show when he's yelling through the megaphone and all the kids are dancing and not listening. It feels like that sometimes, although this time it didn't. It was really great. Everybody, all the bands that performed were very professional, and that's why I chose them, because I know them as friends, but I also know how professional they are. The crew at the theater was very professional, everything was great. But leading up to it, there were definitely moments of resistance, like some serious pushback from different things that could be very discouraging if I let them discourage me. And one thing the War of Art really showed me, and I definitely concur with this, is that if you work on your own resistance, like the blocks you put on yourself, and the big one is, I can't do this would never work, whatever it is, whether it's putting a zine together, writing a novel, making a film, something that could be from the smallest, or putting a YouTube video up. That is an act of creativity. Anyone who does that, you've created something out of nothing, and you produce something. There are all kinds of resistances along the way. Some of them external, which, like I said, got a few of those zingers, but most of all, it's the most important thing is the internal resistance that you put on yourself. And if you work on that and work through that, the external resistance is just nothing, because you're prepared to move forward and to push forward in ways that you might not expect. I'm all about the creative process and encouraging other people's creativity, not just with words, but actually producing a showcase where they can perform. And I also love music and I love rock and roll. So I was really in my element. So I'm happy it was a success. I'm glad it's over so I can move on to the next project that I'm doing, working on my novel or what have you. And I hope I'll be able to do it again because it was really fun. Anyway, moving on, I did finish the fourth and I'm pretty sure final episode of V.C. Andrews' Dawn on Lifetime. I was very disappointed that they weren't going to do the entire series, book series rather, where the fifth book goes back into Lillian's story. This is a tradition with the V.C. Andrews series that I think is so important and so good, because you get to see why the monster character, the monster grandmother usually, why she became what she became. How was that monster created? They do try to cover it a little bit in the Midnight Whispers, the last in the series. Kind of gloss over, well, this is what happened. There's a lot of information crammed into this final episode, and it seems to be too much. But overall, it was done really well. So Midnight Whispers, here's the book, a little beat up. I have two of these. I think the other one's a little nicer. There we go, nice photo. I love how Fern looks in this. So now we are in the 90s, and little Christy's grown up. She has her sweet 16 birthday party, and Dawn doesn't look a day over 17 herself, but that's another thing. They didn't do a great job in aging the characters, really. They gave Jimmy some glasses. Philip looks with the same blonde hair, long hair. Maybe they threw a few gray streaks in it and the actor didn't want to cut his hair or something, but they could have at least like slicked it back more, given him a little pot belly, because he looked exactly like he did before. Anyway, so it begins with Christy's party. She looks like the perfect Dresden doll. I thought the actress playing Christy was a good choice. She was very good, very pretty. Jefferson is the Twilight's child from the end of the last book. Oh, I hope I don't get this wrong. Gavin is Dawn's stepfather, Orlin Longchamp's son with another marriage. Does that sound right? Because Dawn's stepmother died. I think that's it. Anyway, somehow they're in love. And it's a little odd that the kid playing Gavin in the TV series looks really sweet, and he's kind of another Jimmy, you know, just worships the ground that Christy walks on. Philip and Aunt Bet are still around, Uncle Philip and Aunt Bet. Philip's like falling down drunk. Aunt Bet, who's kind of becoming more and more cynical and bitter and desperate because Philip is still so in love with Dawn. In fact, she discovers that in the basement of the hotel, Philip has a shrine dedicated to Dawn, and he can't stop throwing himself at her. And even though Aunt Bet has dyed, like bleached her hair so she looks more like Dawn, it's not working. They have two little bratty kids, which you see in the, they're more, I guess, featured in the book, as I recall. It's been a while since I read it. But yeah, so things are not that friendly and right at Cutler Cove, especially when, now this is a big spoiler, there was and it's all Philip and Bet's fault. There's an explosion at the hotel. It results in this enormous fire, gas fire, and Dawn and Jimmy both die. Now I have to say, I really teared up when Dawn finds Jimmy laying unconscious in the basement, and you know, he wakes up and looks up at her, and she's looking down at him with this loving look, and she strokes his cheek and says, "It's going to be okay." Boom. Yeah, that got to me. I got very emotional over that. Bronson's still kind of in the periphery. Dawn's mother died. And now, since the hotel burns down, Christy and Jefferson have to live with Philip and Bet at their house, or they take over Dawn's house. And the abuse begins immediately. Bet is a total tyrant, bossing Christy around. Her little brats make fun of them, especially Jefferson. They're teasing and torturing poor little Jefferson. And then Philip, because now he's so drunk and crazy, he kind of has moved his lust, we'll call it love, lust for his own sister, Dawn, onto his niece, Christy. He does attack her, and she runs away to New York with Jefferson. They get on a Greyhound. They go to Manhattan, and I remember this part in the book, it's really good, in search of Michael Sutton, her father. Dawn's unfortunate love affair that, of course, Christy came from it, so it wasn't all bad, but Michael Sutton is on the skids, living in some cold water flat in the East Village, and living with some girl half his age. And he is in no position to help these kids. They really got the New York apartment right. I lived in New York. My apartment building was not too far from that look, although it was a little cleaner. And when Michael Sutton comes stumbling out of the bathroom in his bathrobe, I was just like, perfect, so perfect. Most of the costumes on this episode are, I guess if we call it episode, were okay. They did, the whole 90s thing of big shoulders. I did have to laugh at Jimmy's outfit for the party. He was wearing like an oversized ski sweater, like tucked into pants, and it just was all wrong. First of all, the women, Christy and Dawn and all the guests were wearing like summery spring clothes and bright colors, and he's wearing a sweater tucked into his pants. And then at the end, when Philip completely loses his mind and is wearing his old school jacket and his old school uniform blazer, it fits him perfectly. And he looks exactly like he did when he was 17. Well, most people, myself included, can't fit when they're older into the same clothes that they wore as a teenager. Some can, but they should have added like a beer gut, and because he's a drinker, he's gone to seed. They should have made that blazer like tight, button popping, and I think in the book it was described that way. So that kind of bothered me. There were a couple things like that, but overall, I enjoyed it. Oh, I forgot the whole part where they go. Gavin rescues Christy and Jefferson in New York. They take a bus with the last of their money, to the Meadows in Lynchburg, Virginia, and they move in with Charlotte and Luther, and everything's going great until Fern shows up with her new boyfriend, Monty. And especially in the book, I remember this section in the book, Fern, because she now has this information on Christy, where Christy is underage, so she can send her back to Philip and Bet. She turns Christy into her personal slave. So while Christy and Jefferson are at the Meadows, they learn more about the family secrets, what happened with Emily, what happened with Lillian, which is fully explored in the next book. Maybe they'll do a season 2 where they tell Lillian's story and really drag it out. That would really be cool, because that whole thing is great, as a great period piece too. Jefferson steps on a nail, he gets tetanus, he goes to the hospital, he's almost, on the brink of dying. Philip and Bet find out, and they all have to go back to Virginia Beach, and Philip doubles down on his attempts to rape Christy. She fights him off, and that's when he goes into his crazy thing when he wears the school uniform. She fights him off again and escapes and goes to Bronson's house, and he ends up, they take, the men in the little white coats, I love it, take Philip away. Bet finally is kind of forced to see the truth, and It's kind of like a happy ever after somewhat, because Christy and Jefferson are now taken care of. The family curse is broken. So overall, I thought the series was great. Highly entertaining. Yes, it's silly, but that's part of the appeal. All right, so what else? We are now into Garbaugust, and I am reading probably one of the trashiest books ever, and I love it, and that's Lace by Shirley Conran. This is not the cover that I read back in the 80s. This is like a new cover. I'm not really sure I'm that wild about it. I don't know. Let me know what you think. There's so much going on, and this cover doesn't read what this book is. It should have like a woman in her black lace and diamonds. I think that was the original cover. If I can find the original cover, I'll put it here. I may be confusing it with Scruples, which is another book that came out around this time that I considered reading for this Garbaugust, but I'm sticking with Lace. And it might take me the entire month to read this book, because look, it's like 800 pages and I'm only in the first 100 pages. It's so trashy and it's great. So this is my Garbaugust pick. I'm hoping I'll read a few other books, but it might take me a while to get through all of that. I've been reading it every day though. I've been trying to discipline myself, and it's so much fun. It's such a fun read. I just wanted to remind people to pick up the new Bookworms, just throwing it out there. I'll link it below. We're getting great reviews on Etsy for this zine, so I'm excited. I just got a bunch of submissions in the mail for the Halloween issue. The deadline for that is September 15th. So if you're interested in contributing, mail me a story or an essay under 1,500 words. I'll put a link in the description if you want more information about it, but pick up the zine and see if it's something you're interested in writing for or just reading. It's a lot of fun. Okay, I did finish this Time Life book, Mysteries of the Unknown. This one is Dreams and Dreaming. In my last haul video, I showed how I just got a bunch of these. It was an early birthday present from Joe, and I have, I think, 22, and there are 33. So I'm looking up how to, over the next year, fill in the gaps of my collection. But I love this book. And now I'm going back and starting with the first one. It's Mysterious Places, which is the first in the series. And like I said, I'm missing a few, but I'm going to try to fill it out and read them all in order. But the Mysterious Places one is great because it starts right with all the stuff about Atlantis, and I just love it, and ancient Egypt, and it's just in my wheelhouse, as is Dreams and Dreaming. The artwork in here is really good, and it gets into like the archetypes that we all dream about, if we remember our dreams. There's so much mystery involved in dreaming, and this book, oh, here we go. Here's the different archetypes, like the father, dreaming about the father, the child. Of course, there's the mother and the animus, different things. I had a dream yesterday. In fact, just a quick story. I finished this book yesterday in my studio, and I was on the couch and I was a little tired. And one of the things that toward the end of the book, this was covering was the idea of lucid dreaming, where you are aware in your dream that you're dreaming and you can control it. And I have experienced lucid dreaming quite a bit, actually. What usually happens is I become aware that I'm dreaming and then I wake up. It's really hard to stay in that zone where you're conscious but also in the dream. And before I went to sleep or took my nap, one thing they suggested in the book, that you tell yourself, I'm going to have a lucid dream, or I'm going to remember my dream. Well, I didn't have a lucid dream, but I napped and I had a very vivid dream about my shadow self. This is a recurring, I don't even know if I would call it a nightmare, although it did have nightmarish elements to it. And I've also dreamed about being in like a labyrinth, which is usually in the form of an enormous building, where I am in an enormous building right now. My studio is at a huge industrial complex, so that was part of my dream. And like elevators that go not just up and down, but side to side and on angles, and I'm trying to get someplace and I'm stuck and I'm going through these different labyrinths. which is all symbolic of my own, issues that I'm working through. But I did see my shadow, and then I won't elaborate any further. Something happened that day which was kind of reminded me of my shadow and going back to the resistance of doing art. It's all kind of part of that. So, great book. I'm looking forward to reading all of these, but as I was looking through that, it reminded me of how much I love Omni magazine, because it kind of came out around the same time. It's very 80s, and I just picked an Omni off the shelf. This is from January 1980. Do you see a similarity? We've got the silver, the typeface. It's a little hard to read some of that silver sometimes, but this is all very much laid out in the same way as these books. I don't know if you can really tell how much silver is on here, but it's here we go. Quite a lot of silver going on. I just love this stuff. I mean, it's a shame that somebody's dog chewed on this. I found this in a thrift store for $5. Maybe when I finish my entire series collection, I will replace this one. But yes, so I've been looking at some Omni. It's actually been a nice contrast reading these books and looking at Omni and reading some of the old articles in this. And I just love the ads. They have very good short stories and art in these Omni magazines. Let me know in the comments if you know Omni, if you've ever read them, collect them, or these books, The Mysteries of the Unknown, or if you've watched the Dawn series, or if you've read Lace, or what have you been reading for garbaugust, or just in general. Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts. So that's all I have for today. Thanks for stopping by my haunted library, and I'll see you soon. Bye.